ChatGPT, or one of these 7 alternatives? Which one should you actually be using right now? I ran all 7 through real decision tests, kept a live scoreboard, and I'll match each one to the exact type of user it fits. And what shocked me is that the tool with the best benchmark scores isn't the one most people should switch to. ChatGPT is the default everyone starts with, but the 7 challengers, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, Copilot, Grok, OpenRouter, and Notebook LM, each fix a specific thing ChatGPT gets wrong, so pick the one that targets your actual complaint. Alternative 1, Claude, the coding challenger. You're 200 messages into a refactor, ChatGPT drops the earlier context, and you're re-explaining your whole architecture from scratch. Again, and that's the failure mode Claude is built to fix, so SWE bench verified and real-world code review precision are the 2 numbers that tell us whether it actually does. I looked at the SWE bench numbers, and they're basically a dead heat. GPT-5 with thinking hits 74.9%. Claude Opus 4.1 lands at roughly 74%. The code review precision gap is more interesting. GPT 5.5 finds 65% of expected issues. Claude's baseline is 58.3%, so ChatGPT has a real edge there. Community sentiment, though, consistently points to Claude for long, context-heavy sessions. Okay, so the gap on SWE bench is genuinely 1 point. That's as close as benchmarks get. The decisive call isn't the headline number, though. If your pain is ChatGPT losing context on a 300-message refactor, Claude is the safer pick because developers consistently report it holds up better on extended sessions, and that's the actual job you're trying to solve. On the benchmarks, ChatGPT and Claude are within a point of each other on SWE bench, so the scoreboard stays at 0-0 with this one a draw. The risk lens breaks it open. If long coding sessions are your pain point, Claude is the lower risk call because the downside of ChatGPT dropping context mid-refactor is hours of lost work. I've lost real hours to that context drop problem, so I live in these tools enough to know when a benchmark number and a real-world workflow tell completely different stories. Drop a comment if the context loss thing has burned you too. Alternative 2, Gemini, the free-thinking rival. ChatGPT Plus runs $20 a month, which adds up to $240 a year, and if you're a student who mostly needs a solid thinking tool for coursework, that price starts to feel pretty steep. One of the biggest problems I run into when using AI agents is turning their output into YouTube content I can actually use to market my product. That's why this video is sponsored by Subscriber, a tool that helps business owners connect their AI agents to YouTube and market their products without spending 10 hours every week creating content. You can connect Claude or ChatGPT directly to Subscriber. It then analyzes your business, website, and YouTube channel to help you create SEO-optimized video ideas, scripts, thumbnails, and even complete videos that actually match your brand. What I like most is that every week, Subscriber gives me a list of high-potential video ideas I can immediately execute, and it can even help edit videos for me, with or without my face, including videos like the one you're watching right now. It's easy to get started, and you can try Subscriber for free using the link in the description below. Now back to the video. Gemini's free tier includes extended thinking at $0, so let's see if it actually holds up. I looked at what you actually get on each free tier. ChatGPT's free plan has message limits. Gemini gives you extended thinking for nothing, and it plugs natively into Gmail, Docs, and Drive, so you're not copy-pasting everything. GPT-5 Pro still leads on GPQA Diamond at 89.4%, with Gemini 2.5 Pro close behind, so the intelligence gap is real but narrow enough that the free tier makes Gemini the value pick. Gemini takes this one, and the scoreboard moves to ChatGPT 0, Alternatives 1, with the Claude matchup still a draw. I didn't expect the free tier gap to be this clean. Gemini's extended thinking at $0 is a direct, concrete answer to the complaint that ChatGPT's free plan is too restrictive. And for students or casual users, the safer financial call is pretty obvious. Alternative 3, Perplexity, the research machine. You ask ChatGPT a fact-based question, and it gives you a confident answer with no sources, and you have no idea if it just made something up. That's a real workflow problem for anyone doing research. And Perplexity's whole design is built around fixing exactly that. So let's see what the data says. Perplexity's citations are always on by default, while ChatGPT requires you to manually enable browsing every time. On G2 ratings, ChatGPT scores 4.7 out of 5 versus Perplexity's 4.5. so ChatGPT has a slight user satisfaction edge. For coding, Perplexity only does basic explanations. It's a research tool rather than a dev tool. But the research workflow win is Perplexity's, and it's not subtle. Fair point. ChatGPT does rate higher on G2 overall, and if you need coding help alongside research, Perplexity genuinely can't compete. But that G2 gap is 0.2 points, and the citation behavior gap is a design choice, not a close call. If research and fact-checking are your primary job, the risk of getting an unsourced hallucination from ChatGPT is the exact thing you're trying to avoid. Perplexity takes it, and the tally goes to ChatGPT 0, alternatives 2, with one draw still on the board. I had expected ChatGPT's higher G2 score to make this closer, but the risk of an unsourced answer on a research task is the deciding factor. Perplexity's always-on citations cut that risk by default, and that's the safer design for anyone doing fact-based work. Alternative 4, Copilot, the M365 native. Your team is already in Microsoft 365 all day, Word, Excel, Teams, Outlook, and every time you want ChatGPT's help, you're copying and pasting content back and forth like it's 2010. That friction is real, and it compounds fast. Copilot is native to that stack, so let's see if the integration actually changes the math. Watch what happens when you compare data access. ChatGPT is basically an island. You need to manually copy and paste content from M365 every single time, while Copilot reads your emails, docs, and calendar directly. For flexible multi-tool workspaces outside Microsoft, ChatGPT Business wins on breadth. But if your org lives in M365, the copy-paste tax makes ChatGPT genuinely painful to use day-to-day. Copilot wins this one, and the score moves to ChatGPT 0. Alternatives 3, 1 draw on the board. The risk of picking ChatGPT in a Microsoft-first org is that you're adding manual friction to every single AI interaction, and for a whole team that compounds into a serious productivity drain. Copilot's native grounding removes that risk entirely. Alternative 5, Grok, the unfiltered personality. X Premium runs $8 a month versus $20 for ChatGPT Plus, and that price difference alone gets people's attention. Price only matters if the model can actually compete on benchmarks and ecosystem, though, and Grok 4 is close to GPT-5 on GPQA Diamond and SWE Bench, so let's see where the gap actually lands. I had to run through the benchmark data twice because the scores are genuinely close. Grok 4 trails GPT-5 Pro on GPQA Diamond, but not by much, and SWE Bench is basically similar. Where Grok clearly wins is personality. It's unfiltered and humorous, and at least one user I found switched specifically for story writing. Where ChatGPT wins is ecosystem, enterprise integrations, API breadth, and plugin support are in a different league. ChatGPT takes this one, and the scoreboard goes to ChatGPT 1, alternatives 3, one draw still on the board. Grok's personality and price are genuinely appealing, but the safer pick for anyone who needs broad integrations and a mature API is ChatGPT. The downside of betting on Grok's narrower ecosystem is real if your workflow goes beyond casual chat. So the scoreboard's lopsided right now, but the two tests still ahead are the ones that could actually change your decision. OpenRouter is about whether you should be locked into a single AI vendor at all, and Notebook LM is about whether the hallucination problem on your own documents is a deal breaker. Both of those could flip how you think about the whole stack. Alternative 6, OpenRouter, the multi-model router. You're building a product, you've got separate API keys for OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, and every time one provider goes down or raises prices, you're scrambling to swap out integrations. OpenRouter gives you one API key for dozens of models, including ChatGPT's own, so let's see what that actually gets you. When I looked at the routing capabilities, OpenRouter gives you a unified API with a model catalog, popularity rankings, prepaid credits, and provider fallback routing. So if one provider goes down, traffic reroutes automatically. ChatGPT's direct API is single vendor only, and the one honest caveat is that OpenAI's enterprise compliance terms are cleanest on a direct or Azure path, not through a router. OpenRouter takes it, and the score goes to ChatGPT 1. Alternatives 4, one draw on the board. What got me here is that OpenRouter actually includes access to ChatGPT's own models, so you're not giving up GPT-5, you're just adding a safety net. For any developer who wants to A/B test Claude against Gemini against GPT with a single API call, the risk of staying locked to one vendor is just unnecessary. Alternative 7, Notebook LM, the source-grounded audio. You upload a 50-page report to ChatGPT, ask it to summarize the key findings, and it confidently tells you things that aren't in the document at all. That hallucination problem on your own source material is a specific, painful failure mode, and Notebook LM locks its answers strictly to what you uploaded. So let's see how big that difference actually is. I looked at how each tool handles document-heavy work. Notebook LM won't answer outside your uploaded sources, which cuts hallucination risk dramatically, and it converts your documents into audio overviews, basically AI podcasts you can actually listen to. ChatGPT wins on breadth, handling open-ended creative tasks and coding across unlimited topics. But for strictly source-grounded document analysis, Notebook LM is in a completely different category. Notebook LM takes the final test, and the full scoreboard lands at ChatGPT 1, Alternatives 5, 1 draw. The safer pick for document-heavy work is pretty obvious. The downside of ChatGPT hallucinating details from your own uploaded report is that you might act on information that was never there, and Notebook LM's source-locked design removes that risk entirely, for free. Okay, so why are people leaving ChatGPT? 3 concrete reasons. Long chats lose context, and you end up re-explaining your whole setup from scratch. Frequent model deprecations 4.0, 5.1, 03, GPT 5.2-instant force you to rebuild workflows every few months. And pricing can run steep, with some reports putting plus-tier costs at over $31,000 annually at scale. Now, where ChatGPT genuinely still wins. For coding and creative writing, GPT-5's benchmark scores: 89.4% on GPQ-SA Diamond, 74.9% on SWE Bench, put it at the top of the stack. For teams that need a flexible AI workspace across multiple tools, ChatGPT Business beats Copilot's M365 only grounding. And for anyone who wants a polished, safety-guarded assistant rather than an unfiltered personality, ChatGPT's reliability is a real advantage. Pick the alternative that targets your specific complaint. Perplexity for research and citations. Claude for long coding sessions. Gemini if $240 a year is too much. Copilot if you live in M3 and Guard 5. OpenRouter if you're building and want one key for everything. Notebook LM for your own documents, and Grok if you want unfiltered personality at $8 a month. ChatGPT only wins if none of those complaints apply to you. The through line across all 7. The alternatives win on specialization. ChatGPT wins on breadth. One thing that doesn't show up in any of the pricing pages: ChatGPT Plus is marketed at a low monthly rate, but some enterprise reports put the actual Plus tier spend at over $31,000 annually when you factor in team seats and usage overages. That gap between the headline number and the real bill is the kind of thing you only find out after you've already committed. If you're specifically looking at the free side of this, I put together a full breakdown called Best Free ChatGPT Alternatives that actually work. It goes deeper on the $0 options and which ones are actually worth your time versus which ones just look good in a headline. That one's worth checking out if cost is the main reason you're looking to switch.